All right, what's going on, guys? Simple Sports back, another episode. And so tonight we have our first game seven. I was going to do a video, or I guess an episode or whatever, a couple days ago. But I kind of felt like the way both series were going, we were going to get game sevens out of both of them. So I just wanted to wait till we had both game sevens on hand, and here we are. And I have to tell you, I'm pretty pumped. This is one of my favorite times of the year. Obviously the season builds up more and more and more, and once you get to the end, it's just, it's the best part, obviously, because the most is on the line, the most is at stake. Legacies are being made, names are being made, things of that nature. Future is being determined, all sorts of stuff. And so here we are with the conference finals, both East and West. East tonight, Boston and Cleveland, and I am pretty pumped. Is about as pumped as I could be for anything. Also, the World Cup coming up, super pumped about that. Right after that, we're going to have football right all over again. So I'm all super excited about sports right now. So I want to talk about what we're going to see and what's at stake for the next couple of days here with the NBA. And obviously we have the Eastern Conference Finals tonight, so I want to start with that. Oh boy. So my heart says pick Boston, right? Obviously, I'm a Laker fan, so I have no business liking Boston. But I can't help but like a team that fights as much as they do and just pushes through all the negativity all year. Once Kyrie was down, Gordon Hayward was down, pretty much everyone counted them out, including myself. And they have proven everyone wrong. And I have no choice but to respect them for that. And so my heart wants them to win. My heart thinks they'll win. At home, they've been perfect at home so far. I have no reason to believe otherwise. Cleveland has not played well all year. They have somehow managed to scratch and fight their way to the Eastern Conference Finals, and I don't expect that to all of a sudden change overnight, considering it's been obviously the entire season and nothing has changed. They're still the same team on the road. They still play the same lackadaisical defense, so forth and so on. But they have LeBron James, and it's really hard to count him out. It's really hard to go against that. And so I'm conflicted as to who to pick. I normally trust my instincts more, which would tell me to go with Boston. But obviously, sometimes you have to think things over. And obviously, LeBron James has shown up big time in some big time games. And so there's no reason to expect any different here, except there is, because the one thing I will say about this game, I'm going to pick Boston to win. Okay? I don't expect anything to change, and from that regard, I don't see why I should then flip my pick solely because of blind faith in LeBron James. That's not something I'm going to do. Do I have faith in LeBron James? Of course I do. But I am not going to pick, who's going to win based on that. I'm going to pick who's going to win based on who I think has the best chance to win, and I think that is Boston. With that being said, win or lose for LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers tonight, the one absolute must thing that has to happen tonight, the one thing, or I guess I should say that cannot happen tonight, I don't care if Cleveland gets blown out by 40. I don't care if Cleveland wins. If it's a buzzer beater by LeBron or someone on Boston and they lose and they don't make the finals, they make it to the finals. I don't care what happens. The one thing that cannot happen is for LeBron James to have a bad game. And more than, obviously, they're not going to win if he has a bad game. But what I mean is, even if he has a great game and they lose, which has already happened in the series, that's okay. Everyone will be able to live with that. There'll be sympathy because of the roster. There'll be sympathy because of Kyrie Irving not being there. There'll be sympathy because Boston's playing out of their minds, and Brad Stevens and the young rookie and Jaylen Brown and so forth and so on, to all of them. There will be excuses for LeBron James because there's always excuses for LeBron James. Someone's going to make an excuse for LeBron James. And for me personally, I think you just got to get it done. Whatever the circumstances, whatever it takes, you got to get it done. But there will be plenty of excuses for LeBron James if he loses. But the one thing he cannot do is have a bad game, because if he does have a bad game, people will rip him apart for having a bad game in the clutch when it's needed most. Game 7, Eastern Conference Finals. Obviously, the only thing more than that would be in the finals. You got to have a good game. And if he doesn't, people are going to rip him apart. Skip's going to rip him apart. Everyone's going to rip him apart for not having a great game. And he can't he can't come out and have that 26-point game he had, I think, in Game 5 or Game 6, whichever one it was. You can't have that. You can't have 6-8 turnovers. You can't go 50% from the free throw line. You can't do things like that. Not in this game. Now, if you lose, hey, it is what it is. You lost. There'll be legitimate excuses and reason as to why they lost, and that's okay. I have no issue with that. But the one thing you cannot do, LeBron James, is have a bad game, because people are going to rip you apart, fair or unfair. They're going to do it. And you can't have a bad game. You can't blame the roster all year and then have a bad game when it matters most. See, it's everyone else's fault. The roster's bad. And then in the most, forget everything, set everything aside, because you have no choice at this point. It's Game 7. They're going to tip that ball off whether you're ready or not. And so in that moment, you can't have a bad game. So that's the only thing I think is at stake for LeBron James. I don't think really anything is going to be affected by it. I think his legacy in that regard is pretty much set in stone. Unless he were to win a finals, I don't think he can be relegated in any way. So I don't see it coming down to anything other than that. But he can certainly have another little ding in there if he has a bad game tonight. So that's the only thing I wanted to point out about that. And for Boston, Brad Stevens has been hearing all this vitriol and hatred towards him being a young up-and-coming coach and sort of his path to where he got. Some of the rookies, there's backlash on them. They shouldn't be doing this well. It's all Brad Stevens. Whatever. Boston has been getting all the credit. And I, as I said, have been a part of that. I readily admit that. But they have a chance here to really take over. Who knows what happens if you do beat LeBron James in the Eastern Conference Finals. Maybe that is no longer a team or even a person you have to deal with in the future. Maybe this victory pushes him to the Western Conference, giving you control of the East, at least for a fight, along with Philly and a few other teams. So you have a chance to really shape the future here. What if they do beat you and they go on to win a title somehow? Maybe he doesn't leave. Maybe they get some more players in Cleveland, and all of a sudden you're sort of back where you started. So you do have a chance to shape that as well if you're Boston. That's something you have to think about. And then in the West, obviously with the Rockets and the Warriors, Game 7, no CP3 in that series. The Warriors are getting a break there, but I do want to be clear. I think the Warriors have made this a closer series than it should have been. They certainly gave away 2 games with some awful play down the stretch from all members of the Warriors roster. So I just want to make that point. But they do have a chance to affect their legacy as well, KD and Steph, because you can't lose. Listen, if you were to lose to the Rockets in a 7-game series, there would be criticism, sure, but it wouldn't be nearly as bad as if you get to where you are now, minus Andre Iguodala for a few games, and then for CP3 to be out in Game 7 and you lose to James Harden. There are going to be a serious amount of conversations about the team that's there and whether or not the roster should stay together and what happened to this team. They choked and all this other stuff is going to happen if you lose on Monday. So that's something to keep in mind. KD has not played particularly well down the stretch of these games, so that's obviously something that they're going to talk about if they do lose this Game 7. Same thing with Steph. Steph had some particularly shortcomings in this game as well, or in this series as well. At particular moments, he had some great third quarters. He played great in Game 6, but he had some moments as well where you were kind of scratching your head. And so that was going to be a conversation, or it will be a conversation if they lose Game 7. And then for James Harden, I think James Harden got saved here, sort of. I think much like LeBron, I don't think anyone's going to fault him for losing. I don't think they were going to fault him for losing to Golden State in the first place with CP3. I think it's even more certain now that he's not going to be at fault for losing to Golden State without CP3 in the lineup, unless, much like I said for LeBron, he has a bad game. He can't have a bad game. That's the one thing he can't do, because then they're going to, even minus CP3, they're going to immediately go back to that same discussion that they've had before, which is James Harden is not clutch. He can't do it in the playoffs and so forth and so on. They're going to have those conversations. And, I forget who I was listening to. I forget who I was listening to. I was listening to a podcast or maybe something on YouTube. I don't know. But they said James Harden is the best player, but Chris Paul is sort of the head of the snake. And obviously the head of the snake is gone, or at least up in the air right now for Game 7. And so that's something that he's going to be fighting against if he loses this game. That's something that they're going to hold against his legacy if he loses this game. If he has a bad game, I should say. Not if he loses. But if he has a bad game. He can't have that Game 5 or Game 6 against the Spurs like he had last year or the year before. Like, you can't have that. That's the one thing you can't have if you're James Harden. These are the things that get me excited for football, basketball, soccer, whatever, is talking about and thinking about things like these, because everything is a story. And for me, as I go back through the years, I think about all of these scenarios from where I started, all the way back to Kobe Bryant and Shaq in the early days and on forward. And it's all a story. All these things are connected. It's, maybe that's something I'll do one day, is try to write a book on sort of how the dominoes fell in the NBA towards legacy and the things that could have happened and things that didn't happen and things like that. So really interesting. And then the last thing I want to talk about is CP3 and Mike D'Antoni, because I just am curious if CP3's legacy takes a hit if James Harden does lead the Rockets to a victory, which is obviously, can he do it without Chris Paul? Was Chris Paul necessary? Who was the better player? Like, those are things that are going to be discussed. At least I think so. Do I think it would have an effect on it? I don't. I hope, at least I would hope it wouldn't have an effect. I don't. For him to play this much and get them this far alongside James Harden, I don't think you can hold it against them for missing a game. Yes, it is the biggest game. It is the single biggest game, but I don't think you can hold it against them for missing that. Although, again, it does fit the narrative of kind of dinged up when it matters and things like that. But at the end of the day, I don't think you can hold this against him. He's taken them way too far to not give him credit, given the fact that he's going to miss one, potentially 2 games if he misses Game 7. So, and then Mike D'Antoni, plain and simple, is he a good coach? Does his system work? Obviously, I think he's a good coach, because you don't get this far without being a good coach. But the question is there a ceiling that is just simply not the finals on the way he likes to play basketball? And that is the conversation that people are going to have if they don't make it to the finals. If you do make it to the finals, all of that stuff just instantly goes away. And so we'll see. We'll see what happens. Like I said, I'm pretty pumped. I'm about to go make dinner, get ready for the game tonight. I cannot wait. I will probably, I guess I'll do a video for each Game 7 instead of doing one combined one like this. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. It depends on how great the games are. If it turns out to be a dud by chance, then maybe not. But otherwise, I will see you guys next time. Peace.